Luck Trading Corp. for rezoning at 3560 Moncton Street from Steveston Commercial CS2 to Commercial Mixed Use ZMU 43 Steveston Village. And we have Suzanne Smith and Kevin Eng.
Thank you very much, Councillor McPhail and members of committee. The rezoning proposal at 3560 Moncton Street is for a mixed-use development in the Steveston Village Heritage Conservation Area. The proposed uses, density, and two-story building height all comply with the land use policies in the Steveston Area Plan used to guide development in the village core area. You will note the image shared on the screen for context. So if I can get clerks to pull up PLN page 40 from your agenda package. In response to the Planning Committee referral from October 22nd, 2019, staff have further reviewed the building design and materials, and several changes have been made to the project that include revisions to maintain a contiguous, uniform building parapet along Moncton Street and 2nd Avenue with minimal breaks, with the exception of a building recess mid-building block along the longer 2nd Avenue frontage to help with breaking up of the building massing. The replacement of all glass guardrails for the roof deck and balconies with metal picket guardrails with a wood grain finish. The pedestrian-oriented development is maintained throughout this project, and the Moncton Street commercial presence is strengthened with additional retail entrances added along this frontage. The overall approach to building materials has been simplified, proposing board and batten cladding on the ground commercial level and horizontal lap siding on the 2nd level. The revisions to the design of the proposal are key elements that are fundamental to achieving a building design as supported in the Steveston Area Plan, Development Permit Guidelines, and Sakamoto Guidelines document. Subject to Planning Committee's consideration of this proposal, a forthcoming development permit application will be required where detailed design review and further refinement will occur. Happy to answer any questions from committee.
Can you just speak about the rooftop decks and how people will access those? Thank you.
Sure. The 5 residential units all have proposed private rooftop decks. A hatch design is proposed for each of those residential units. That hatch design is no higher than the height of the parapet and is situated so that they are not visible from the street. That hatch design will allow for stairway access to and from the rooftop deck areas.
Thank you. I'll open it up to committee now. Are there questions from committee? We do have the applicant here, so Mr. Vergy, the applicant, is here, so but I'll open it up to committee first. Councillor Liu.
Thank you to the chair, to staff. Thank you for this report, and thank you for all the work you've done on this. I know this came before us once before, and you've sent it back, and it seems that a lot of effort's been made to really conform to the Steveston look and the Sakamoto guidelines, as far as I can tell. Maybe I'm missing something. I think it was when it went to committee and they had their points, they were talking about the hatch and accessibility on the roof. And I know that we've run into other situations in the Lower Mainland where they've had that hatch roof and they're then unable to access their own roof when it's snowing. They can't lift the roof up. And then in inclement weather, opening up that hatch that way brings rain into the unit. So I'm wondering, because of the way this building is designed, it seems that they probably could have those little, if you will, dog houses on the top. Would that still work here in this situation? Because they're kind of offset, they're back from the road quite a bit. You can't see it from the ground. Is there a better way to do it? And we heard from the panel that that accessibility for people should be considered, because otherwise the units are accessible. Am I correct in seeing that?
Through the chair, in response to Councillor Liu's question, the residential units are accessible as there is an elevator that provides access to the second level. The requirement for elevators to extend up to the rooftop decks is not a requirement, as these are private individual amenity areas. They're not communal amenity areas. And furthermore, a rooftop structure would add significant additional height to the proposal and would exceed the 9-meter maximum height limitation specified in the Steveston area plan.
Okay. Through the chair, if I may add, through the chair to Councillor Liu, you'll notice on PLN 37 there is a little detail regarding the access to those individual rooftop accesses, and those include a chair lift or a stair lift to help access with an additional device to help open that would best be used in better weather than snow. But there is provision up to that rooftop level on an individual unit basis for accessibility.
Okay, so it could be done. It's just not typical. And have you actually visited any, like the Broderick ones, and seen how they work? I know I had the opportunity to visit them and see how they work, and at first blush it appears okay, but certainly it's not going to work, in snow or other inclement weather, when you might want your kids playing off the street but in the snow.
Sorry, Mr. Ng, go ahead.
Through the chair, I have visited the ones in the Roderick development. I'm not sure if it's the exact same system that's being proposed here. They are looking at a system where the rooftop hatches could be automated to facilitate ease of opening and closing those areas. That also has to be reviewed in conjunction with building approvals to ensure that all hatch clearances and railings and such are all adhered to. So it is a work that's in progress, but something that can be implemented as part of this project and something that's going to be looked at.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Steves. You're muted, Councillor Steves.
Again, the only question I have of staff is that are we obligated to rezone this property?
Through the chair to Councillor Steves, it is Council's prerogative whether or not to allow a rezoning application to proceed. The applicant has provided a proposal which is in compliance with the city's regulations that are in place.
Yeah, okay, my second comment is this building is so far from the Sakamoto guidelines with recessed balconies. If you look at the guidelines, they'd be set back 6 feet and the balconies would be in front of the buildings. This is no way anywhere as close to Heritage Victorian. I simply won't be voting for it. I think we should have a commercial building without the residential building and upstairs and the so-called communal garden area, whatever it is.
All right, are you finished, Councillor Steves?
Oh, that's it. I'm out for it.
Thank you. Councillor Wolf?
Thank you, the chair to staff. Just a couple of questions, because I saw the Sakamoto guidelines were debated, I think, around 20.
I can't hear you very well, Councillor Wolf.
Okay, let me try again. Sorry, my audio cut out again, so I missed a little bit. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm speaking through my phone, looking at my iPad. So anyway, it just started last night, these issues. The question was related to the Sakamoto guidelines. So last it was, I think, thoroughly discussed was 2017, so before my time. I don't remember getting a memo of what they were. I know we got like the Kavanaugh guidelines, which are agricultural land, but can I just get clarification? How far from those is this development?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I can speak a bit to how the Sakamoto guidelines connect, and perhaps I'm not sure if our Director of Policy Planning wants to chime in, Mr. Hopkins. But essentially, the Sakamoto guidelines prior to 2017 were guidelines that were incorporated into the Steveston area plan, but were not specifically referenced. So they've been embedded essentially into the Steveston area plan and principle. However, in 2017, in response to a council referral, they were reincorporated in their entirety as part of Appendix 2, attached to the Steveston area plan, and they were noted to be interpreted with some flexibility. So the intent underpinning the Sakamoto guidelines, staff feel, is represented within this development, but with some flexibility applied. Sorry, Mr. Hopkins, I don't know if you want to add anything to that or not.
I have nothing further to add. Thanks.
Then through the chair to staff on that.
Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Okay. Hi. Through the chair to staff. Further on that, I also have talked to residents who were concerned that it used to be that before the building was demolished in Steveston and the new one came up, that there was a Steveston group that would be involved with advising the council on it. But now that process happens afterwards. Can staff comment on that? I apologize, I'm not on planning committee and I wasn't on council when this was probably discussed heavily. But what was the group before that used to comment and provide us advice, and what's the group that does that now after things are built? If that's the right direction from what I've heard.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I think what you might be referring to is the Steveston Design Committee. There used to be a specific design committee that reviewed proposals in the Steveston area some time ago. There's been discussion at the committee level to reinstate this committee, and there is reference in this report that staff are actually working on a report to bring forward to committee in the near future that would look at options to reestablish that committee.
Okay, thank you. Then through the chair, just a different question. Does this new proposal, does it emphasize the storefront of the commercial portion being on 2nd Street, or does it promote it and is the main entrance and stuff on Moncton Street? Because I've heard some mixed messages on that.
Through the chair, in response to Councillor Wolf's question, this project responds to both commercial street frontages, as both have public road frontage along both Moncton Street and 2nd Avenue. I will note that as part of the revised proposal in front of you, the Moncton commercial frontage has been strengthened by the addition of an additional retail frontage. So in addition to all the remaining commercial retail access points along 2nd Avenue, and at the corner, an additional retail entrance has been added on Moncton Street across the development.
Great. I appreciate the staff's responses. Thank you, Chair. That's all.
Councillor Day?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm looking at page PLN 39, and that's what Steveston is supposed to look like. A whole bunch of different styles of roof lines. It's supposed to have smaller windows, some gable roofs, and then you look at the proposal on page 40. A stark difference between the character of Steveston and what is now modern. So to say that this is a heritage style just because it's got some extra trim is, I think it's just sad. And to me, it's just a big shoebox. So if it looks more like page PLN 39 with different heights, different types of roofs, facades, A-frames, I think I could live with it. But I can't live with this. I think it is just another modern building. And I'm not the only one. June Stevens on PLN 51 writes, "We do not need more condos. We need character in our village to be maintained." Number 52, Linda Barnes writes, "Nothing of notable excitement." And on page 54, it says the overall mass is overshadowing the neighborhood buildings, and the proposal clearly does not support current vision of a historic fishing village and does nothing to preserve the historical aspects of Steveston for future generations. So I won't be supporting it. I think it's not near good enough for all of the reasons that these people said, and by my observation that it just doesn't follow the character of Steveston. So I will not be supporting this.
Councillor McNulty, let me just,
On?
yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah, well, thanks very much. I have a couple of questions and then a comment or two, if I may. Where am I here? I want to get my pages right. In terms of the front of the building, it says it's 0 lot line on Moncton Street. How far away from the existing curb would this building be? Do we know? With a 0 lot line? Because all the other buildings on Moncton Street have regressed from the sidewalk. Some are a foot, some are 2 feet, some are 3 feet back. What does this mean?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we're just staff's having a look to see if we have the exact information, but my understanding is it is proposed to be on a 0 lot line, which is in keeping with the guidelines in terms of some of the historical trends. So that my understanding is what is proposed would be in keeping with other developments of this type in the area. I just don't have the exact measurement offhand. Unless if someone else does, they can chime in.
Thank you for that.
Through the chair, in response to the question from Councillor McNulty about the distance from the edge of the curb, it's from my assessment of it, it's approximately 3 meters or just around 10 feet measured from the back of the existing curb to the front of the building, which would be situated at 0 lot line.
So I can tell you what it is. It's 7 of my paces from the edge of the building that exists there now to the edge of the where the sidewalk blends in with the road. That's something like 22 feet, 23 feet. So this will encroach onto the sidewalk then with 0 line and take away from the existing sidewalk that staff have created in Steveston already, which is great. Okay, I'm sure I'm not going to get a comment on that. Okay. Well, the rooftops, I don't even want to talk about. It's where are they going to get 16 parking spaces? Has a traffic study and a parking study been done on 2nd Avenue? Has anybody gone down there with a tape and had a look at it? Where people come across and go north up to Bayview, right beside the Hepworth building?
Madam Chair, perhaps I can field that. The Transportation Department has reviewed this, so yes, that is part of a consideration for this development. I'm just going to observe that this development actually meets your policy for Steveston in terms of rezoning, in terms of heights. Now, while there may be some debate or discussion around the degree to which the guidelines are met, that is common to all applications, and that is not actually what you're looking at here today. It's the rezoning that you're looking at. If there are particular concerns about the design of the building, they can be taken on board and dealt with through the development permit. But in terms of the placement of the building in relation to the property line, the 0 lot line, that is entirely consistent with your policies for the Steveston town site.
Okay. Well, that brings me to my next point. In my comment, and it's unfortunate our policies for the Steveston town site have not been updated and what have you. And I think we need to do that, and I think we need to do that immediately. I think we need to do that before we do any further development in Steveston. I think we're remiss by not having it done. I'm appalled by the comments of the Heritage Commission. I'd like to know who the members were at the time, and but I would agree that this could be a decent development, but it is not heritage in structure. It doesn't look anything like heritage, to be quite frank with you. I'd even like to see false front on it up over the top like it was in the days of Steveston. I have a tremendous concern about retail along 2nd Avenue, where there, on the drawings that we have, there are 3 potential retail spots, and they'll be parking on the street, and there's only 11 spots anyhow between there and Bayview, and they'll be going into the Hepworth building because there isn't enough parking for any visitors, etc. And I think that really needs to be relooked at. It would be my suggestion that this particular development be tabled until, on page 26, staff are concurrently preparing a report. I think we need the report before we do any further development. I'm not prepared to send something to a DPP panel and hopefully it changes. I think it should be changed before we put it on the table to first reading.
Okay, I'll come back to you on that.
Okay.
I'll come back to you
I
on
think
that.
I'm going to make a motion on that. I think that's too late.
Okay, I'll come back to you on
And
that then.
I'm not quite finished my comments, if I may. I feel that 16 parking spaces, et cetera, is the whole configuration. If you go down there, it will take the back, I call a little field in behind the building. There's an inadequate lane down there as well. I think we need to take that in consideration, not with the developer. It's not his or her fault. It's our fault. We've got to look at what we're going to do with that lane because it impacts people to the south and the people to the west. So I just, at this stage, I don't see anything heritage about the building, to be quite frank with the materials or otherwise. And I think a lot of creativity could go into that, and I think somebody could have a lot of fun with this building and make it a destination building and an attraction, to be quite actual in Steveston. But I'm not prepared to go any further until we deal with the suggestion by staff and the design, and the Sakamoto guidelines are in there. And I would suggest we have Bud Sakamoto as the chairman of the committee, since he wrote them, and we really take a look at it. If we go through with this one, then every other development has to follow suit.
That's right.
And to me, just like we did with Polygon, we put a stop, and we are going to look at it and revise it, and that's responsible. And I think it's good. It's not negative. I don't think for the sake of another 6 weeks, whatever, that this development is going to hurt. To be quite frank with you, well, we get our act together and put it all on the table and we know what we're working from. Because as I say, we let, I call it the Illich building go, and I have that, and I want to look in terms of any referral, 3 stories on Bayview. I think we really got to relook at that again. That has tremendous implication in today's construction. What it has, it's not on the topic. So I'd move, when the time comes, I want to give everybody a chance, moved not to refer it back, but to table it. That means the developer stays on hold, and if I get support, and we can pick it up once we've done our due diligence. Thank you.
Councillor Steves, your hand is up again.
Yeah, further comment. What I want people to look at is Chatham Street. We didn't try to make Chatham Street heritage. We agreed to 3-story buildings with commercial downstairs, and every building looks basically the same. You approve this one, every one of those small buildings will be gone. You can't stop them from going up when they can make a fortune going up. And every building on Moncton Street will look like this. And that's totally going to destroy Steveston's character, simply put. So just imagine Moncton Street where every building, both sides of the road, looks like this one. I think it's horrendous.
Councillor Liu?
Thank you, through the chair. So question to staff. It seems to me this one's come before us back in October of 2019. So 14, 15 months ago now, this was in front of us, and we saw generally what it was looking like, what the renderings were, and we sent it back because we had some small concerns, but not big concerns. We didn't go send it back with a global thing to just change it all together. We want a totally different look. We had actually had specific things that we wanted looked at, you know, in terms of, I think, where the breezeway was, where the little cutout of the building was, and where the balconies were and stuff. Like, we had some specific things, and now suddenly, you know, I'm hearing from some of my colleagues that they want a complete, total overhaul and redesign, and I don't know that that's really in keeping with the process that we had started with this person trying to do this development.
That's probably up to council to consider that. All right.
Okay, and then so just to follow up on that though, but we did pass some rules and regulations and style formats for Steveston, specifically on Moncton Street, yeah? Like, we actually said, okay, we want it down to 2 stories. So we'd actually gone through a process where that happened a few years ago. So that was done before this was actually submitted, right? So this was submitted in compliance with those original things. So we're not actually just opening up a can of worms. We had actually, and most of the people on this council were on that decision-making group to allow it in the first place, to say, okay, this is what we want. This then came forward, and we looked at it and said, it's close, but it's not quite there. Let's get it all the way there. And now we're saying we don't have a process. So we did pass something, correct?
Madam Chair, perhaps I can deal with that. Absolutely you did. And it wasn't easy, and it was protracted, and there was lots of debate and back and forth, and there were even revisions. But the suggestion that we've been remiss in not having a policy framework in place in the town site is simply not accurate. The area plan for Steveston, for the town site, is quite precise in terms of uses, density, heights, placement of buildings on the property, etc. And all of that is in place, and this development does comply with all of that. Now, if committee or council no longer supports the policies that were actually adopted into the Steveston area plan, that's another matter, and we could certainly revisit those with direction from you. But the framework considering this development is recent, it's council approved, and it's in place.
And it went through public consultation, yeah?
Yes, it did.
Absolutely, it did. And the terrific thing is that, you know, there was lots of different and often conflicting opinion in that public input process. People have, you know, all sorts of ideas about what should be done, but that was all reconciled, and the Steveston area plan was modified, approved by council after public hearing and after extensive public consultation. So what's left? The details of the design guidelines. And I think it's fair to say that when you last looked at this, it was referred back to revisit some of the design elements. Some changes have been made, but it would appear not insufficient to please a majority on planning committee. But the referral was not to revisit the fundamentals of land use and, you know, where the building sits on the property. There is also a referral, comparatively recent referral, to take another look at establishing a Steveston-specific design committee. Now, this is not the first time that we've had this referral. We did receive a referral some years ago. Staff came back our recommendation was that we continue to deal with design in Steveston with the advisory design panel. That was accepted by council. So we have a relatively recent referral. We plan to come back in a month or two and identify some alternatives for dealing with design in Steveston. One of those options will be the creation of a Steveston-specific design committee.
Which you had spoken about on PLN 26, right?
That's
At the bottom
correct.
of that page, you had talked about that? Okay.
All right, seeing no other comments or questions from a committee, I'll go to Mr. Vergy. Would you like to say anything to committee, Mr. Vergy?
Can you hear me?
Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
The only thing I would like to say is we followed the, if I may call, instructions or guidelines which were given to us from the last October 2019 meeting, and we worked very closely with the planning department, Kevin, and the staff. And it's been back and forth exercise to arrive and meet all the Sakamoto guidelines and the Steveston Village guidelines. And on top of all that, I would like to emphasize that the planning committee in October also suggested that we present our proposal to advisory design panel, and we did, and they fully supported. Yes, there were some comments which we did appreciate and meet those. Try to coordinate those comments from the advisory design panel, and they fully supported. If I can just refer back to Kevin, and he will support that. So we have really worked for last 19 months on this project. It's not something that became overnight and present to the planning committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vergy. I have a question, and perhaps, Mr. Ersick, you're the right person to answer it because you were speaking to it. So as Councillor Liu mentioned, on PLN 26, and then it's the last paragraph, and it says, should council decide to reestablish the Steveston Design Committee, the forthcoming development permit and heritage alteration permit will provide the opportunity. So this application could go through the new committee if we decide to do that. Is that what you mean there?
Madam Chair, yes, that's correct. So if council decides to set up a Steveston-specific design review committee, the development permit for this application could be channeled through that committee.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from committee? Councillor McNulty, you had a suggestion?
Well, I would move that we table the application until we reestablish the Steveston Design Committee.
Second.
And by that, that means it doesn't go any further than here until we relook at and I have a subsequent motion to it, that we look at the terms of reference Steveston Design Committee. With that, we would look at and review the Steveston area plan. I think at the same time, I don't think we can do
I think
one
that has to be a separate.
That would be a separate motion.
Separate referral,
but I'm just giving my rationale why I'm doing it. And I think I heard a period of time of a month or so. And if that's the case, I think before we jump off the pier that we hold up for a month, get the material that we need, and then make our decision from there. And any changes that we would recommend would come from the Steveston Design Committee on the basis of heritage ideas. Thank you.
Is there any other speakers? Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair to staff. So we've heard the number 1 month bandied about. Is that correct, that we could be back up and this application could be back in front of us before, April?
Through the chair, the very minimum amount of time would be a month. I think it's more likely that it'll be 2 months to bring you the report with the options for the design committee, or for dealing with design in the town site. The reality is, though, that once a decision is made in terms of which way to go, it would then take time to implement that as well. But so I think realistically, you're looking at up to a couple of months to get that report with your options for the design committee. And then if you decide to go with a Steveston specific committee, there would have to be recruitment, et cetera, to establish that. So that would take several months beyond that.
So more realistic would be to see this back in the fall then?
Through the chair, I think it could be 3 or 4 months. I think what you have in front of you, though, is a rezoning. So when you consider and make a decision on the design process for Steveston, the rezoning it actually has to go through public hearing. That obviously takes time. So some of that could occur concurrent with the establishment of for instance, a Steveston specific design committee.
So if we pass this now, we could actually add the design after the fact and then work it together?
From a technical point of view, yes, that could be done. But I think from the earlier comments from the committee, I'm not sure that there's a comfort level there. So committee will need to decide what approach you actually want to take with this application.
Councillor Day.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we decided to hold this off for a month or 2 or 3, based on the creation of the Steveston Design Committee, what if they're like the Heritage Committee and they just rubber stamp this? I mean, can we set the direction to the Steveston Design Committee, explaining to them that we want all future developments to look like page PLN 39?
Madam Chair, if I understood the question, typically when you establish a committee to, say, look at design, you would establish terms of reference, and then you would let the committee do its work. You would normally recruit people that have heritage or design expertise. So if your question is, could you bind the folks on that committee to only approve things that appeal to you individually, the answer would be no, because that's not the way, that type of committee works. My suggestion would be that rather than, appoint someone and try to ensure that, whatever they decide aligns with your personal belief, it would be more efficient to just have a council committee for design rather than hire third parties. But, design is a subjective thing. I'm often surprised that people don't like projects or can't see the merits of some projects, which I feel have design merit. And so design is always a very subjective thing. And I'm pretty confident in saying that no matter what you decide for design review in Steveston, project by project, some people will be happy with them and some people will not. And there will be degrees of that because design is subjective.
It's just a follow-up question then. So if we let's say we didn't go with waiting for the creation of a Steveston Design Committee, given that they may love this kind of development, are we better off to get the heritage report done so that we can correct, correct?
Matt, through the chair, I'm not sure which heritage report you're referring to, Councillor Day.
Oh, I thought we were getting a Steveston heritage report. I believe Councillor Steves and Councillor McNulty mentioned that there was a report coming that was a heritage report.
Yes, through the chair, if I may, there's a referral to take a look at different structures for reviewing design of projects within the Steveston town site. So that staff report will be coming forward in the next couple of months.
Okay, so at the very least, I think that if we're going to table this, I would say that we don't just wait for the Steveston Design Committee to be formed, and we actually focus on the heritage report, because that's going to really be directed, once staff brings forward, then council can tweak it and make it more like page 39.
I can't hear you very well, Councillor Day, so perhaps you can work on your microphone. Is there anything else?
Yeah. No, I guess not.
Councillor Steves? Councillor Steves? You're muted.
Got it. I just wanted to refer to people the document that I sent everybody, and that was a referral that we made way back in 2017. And the one paragraph I think that stands out to me was a quote from staff that said the intent of the original Sakamoto guidelines was to encourage the aesthetic restoration of, quote, heritage storefronts in the Steveston downtown revitalization area. As such, the design specifications rendered to be very detailed and specific to the faithful recreation of building facades of around 1900s. Theoretically, if the entire Sakamoto Guidelines document had been incorporated into the Steveston sub-area plan for the Steveston downtown node, the replication of historic building form and character of a specific time period, circa 1900, would eventually emerge over time. Now that's what the Sakamoto Guidelines say and do, and this building doesn't even fit doesn't even compare to a single building in the Sakamoto Guidelines, and yet if it went ahead, that's what we get for the entire street. So while we've amended the area plan to include the Sakamoto Guidelines for information, I still have not made the Sakamoto Guidelines the requirement we had when we had a development permit panel before. And if you look at some of the buildings that were built 20 years ago when we had a panel, they were authentic and they matched the guidelines beautifully. This one does not, and I think we need to use the Sakamoto vision as a requirement for the design panel.
Well, perhaps you should make that when it comes. I mean, staff are listening, so perhaps they can make sure that when the guidelines for this group comes forward, that will be included. Okay.
Exactly.
Is there any other discussion from committee? Well, personally, I just want to say I'm a bit disappointed because I think policy and process are important. And I would personally, while I don't disagree with tabling this, I think that we can allow some of the, like the rezoning aspect to go through. So I'm going to see if there's any appetite. Well, actually, tabling it does not allow that. All right. So I'll call the question then on tabling this and until the establishment of a Steveston Design Committee. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried with Councillors McPhail and Councillor Liu in the opposition. All right, we'll go to item number 2. Application by Spira Venture. Oh, sorry, Councillor McNulty, you wanted another.
I wanted to move that Planning Committee review the area plan for Steveston and offer any suggestions for possible change.
Second. Second it.
Did staff get that? All right, any discussion on that? Councillor Day? You're muted.
Sorry about that. I think it's very important that that includes the authentic Steveston storefronts of the 1900s and the Sakamoto Vision Guidelines. So it's very important that we get this right because we only got one shot to get this right.
Any other comments on referral? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 2, application by Spira Ventures Incorporated for rezoning at 10620 Williams Road from the single detached RS1E zone to the compact single detached RC2 zone. Mr. Rice and Mr. Andrews, anything you wish to add to this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have nothing further to add aside from highlighting the fact that the rezoning is to facilitate the subdivision of one lot into 2 compact lots. The rezoning is consistent with the lot size policy for the area. 2-bedroom secondary suites of approximately 540 square feet or 50 square meters are proposed for each lot. One very good condition cedar tree with a 97 centimeter diameter on lot 2 will be retained. And significant review was conducted to ensure space around the retained on-site tree was best protected and utilized with raised wood decking proposed. And as a result of the tree retention requirements and a shift in the building footprint, prior to bylaw adoption, a DVP application is required for Lot 2 to address the reduced rear yard setback and relocation of outdoor private space to the front yard. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councillor Day is...
Thank you very much. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about was on PLN 78, we have this raised deck around this significant tree. Can you explain to me why we need that raised deck? Like we couldn't just have the ground, that ground level and level? But why do we need the deck?
Through the chair, the raised deck is included to ensure that the tree roots are protected and not damaged. And also, yeah, go ahead.
Could you not just cover the tree roots with more soil? Why do you have to have a raised deck?
Through the chair, that it may cause the tree to die potentially if the tree roots are impacted at ground level.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, if I may, yes, the addition of additional soil on the site would further compact the roots. So staff did work with the developer on a solution as proposed in PLN 78 that would have a wood decking proposed. The posts would have to be carefully excavated. We have been working with the applicant's arborist to ensure that the decking solution would be appropriate. Furthermore, the decking does allow for the applicant to provide private outdoor space, usable space, that is uninterrupted.
Councillor McNulty?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. 2 things. Is this going to be a 2-story a house with a pitched roof, each one of these?
Through the chair, that is correct.
So they will be all higher, when they're built, all higher than the neighboring houses to the east and the west? This house, these 2 houses?
Through the chair, the houses to the east and west are newly constructed houses, so they're at the standard flood construction level required.
If I may, through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the adjacent properties are all consistently zoned for compact single-family residential. So the height of this building would have to comply with the height provisions in that zone, consistent with the rest of the properties along Williams, which is at a maximum of 9 meters or 2.5 stories.
All right. The rear setback on our page 72, does that have any effect on the neighbors? The fact that we're going to build another mega home, even though it's on a smaller lot? I'm thinking of to the south. Is there any effect on the homes directly behind it when we look at the lane? Because it's moving it right back to basically 12 feet from the property line. So they're going to have 20 feet in the front.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the rear yard setback variance is largely being dictated by the tree retention in the front of the property. As staff have indicated, the rear yard variance will require a separate development variance permit application to be submitted to the city. Further review and consideration of those impacts can be conducted at that time. Transportation has reviewed the application. We do feel that the applicant at this point in time has addressed our concerns today.
Okay, I'm looking at the reality than what's in the book. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from committee? The applicant, Mr. Wu, is here. Is there anything you wanted to say to committee, Mr. Wu?
Oh no, I think Nathan and Joshua has addressed most of it.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, there's a recommendation.
Move recommendation.
Recommendation has been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded, thank you. Any more discussion? Councillor Day?
Yeah, I'm going to let this go to public hearing because I'm very interested to see what the public have to say about it. But I am concerned, and I'm going to go drive and take a look at that lane, that this is going to be really close to the house to the south. So, yeah, I'll support it for now, but I have to do more investigation.
So, but basically it's save the tree to get the, yeah. All right.
Which is good. Don't get me wrong. It's just, it seems I have to go take another look. So.
Councillor
Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. I grew up in this neighborhood, and the two houses that are directly behind it are on an angled lot, so they have really long backyards and don't actually touch it. And then the other house has been in construction for about the last 6 years, completely driving the neighbors nuts, and they barely do any work on it. So there's basically a construction site and then two giant backyards that back up to this. I don't see any potential issues with any of the neighbors.
All right. Seeing no further comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 3, Market Rental Housing Agreement Bylaw 10242 to secure market rental housing units at 5500 Number 3 Road. Mr. Rice and Ms. Badgel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have nothing to add to the staff report today. It is a staff report before you associated with a rezoning application that was supported at public hearing last year. This is a market rental housing agreement bylaw to secure 149 market rental units in an entirely 100% market rental building.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Recommendation has been moved and seconded. I do note that representatives of the applicant are here. Were there any questions of the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Manager's update. We do have a couple. Mr. Erceg?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to let committee know about some housing referrals that we're working on. It's kind of good timing. We had 3 referrals that we're planning to bring to committee in May. The first is a review of the market rental housing policies. So the policies currently are incentive-based. We are looking at different approaches to that, where including mandatory provision of a certain amount of rental housing within developments. The second referral that we'll be bringing to you in May is regarding the low-end market rental, the so-called Lima units. The requirement currently is 10% for developments over a certain threshold, 10% of the floor space to be Lima units. We are currently reviewing that rate and a possible increase. Both of those referrals for Lima and market rental include work by a consultant to look at the economic impacts of changing or introducing requirements, and also how we would provide notice and mitigate any impacts of changing the requirements. The third referral that we're planning to bring to the May meeting is regarding the restrictions on rental. So we're looking at different mechanisms where strata corporations would be prohibited from introducing rental restrictions. So we're not sure at this point whether it will just be a meeting dedicated to those referrals or whether there will be some developments on there as well. But we are planning to bring the 3 referrals in May.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Somerville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to update Council. In early January, staff received a referral on the Affordable Housing Integration Policy. So this was for staff to go back and consult with the Richmond Community Services Advisory Committee with regards to how lemur units are placed in developments, whether they're consolidated or whether they are scattered. Staff have had dialogue with the RCSAC. The second part of the referral was to survey tenants within the low-end market rental units, and staff are just in the process of finishing up that survey, and we'll be sending a letter to tenants later this month, and the survey will reside on Let's Talk Richmond, as well as there will be an opportunity for a paper-based survey if tenants prefer the paper-based survey. We will have a memo that's forthcoming to you later this week, but I just wanted to update you on that. We anticipate that we will then have a report back to you on the information that we receive from these tenants, probably early in Q3.
All right, thank you. Councillor Day, you have a question?
Thanks, Kim. So the survey of tenants, I mean, if they're not happen to be on the website, how are they going to find out about it? Through the chair to Councillor Day, we will be connecting with the property managers and also the housing providers to ensure that the surveys and the information about the surveys and the letters get out to the tenants. It will then direct the tenants to the survey that's sitting on Let's Talk Richmond, or they can receive a paper-based copy. Okay, good. That's very good. Thank you. You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right. We're Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering if, since we used to meet twice a month, and Mr. Ersick suggested in terms of our housing referrals, whether we should have a second meeting in the month of May to get us back on the track, because I thoroughly believe that we need to have 2 meetings a month and devoted strictly to those 3 referrals, which give us actually very, very good discussion. I think too often when we get things like that, we tend to gloss over them a bit because we've got a lot on our plate and we've got other developments, and I think it would be good to put committee members in the frame of mind to discuss them and actually invite other members of council to join.
Thanks, Councillor McNulty. I have been in contact with the clerks and with Mr. Ersick, and that's something that we definitely are looking at.
Excellent.
And we're just waiting to see what else is coming through planning right now.
Good job. Thank you.
All right, and seeing no further business, you look for adjournment.
Adjournment.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? We are adjourned, and we do have a closed meeting.